I was the it girl for the girls in first grade. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Gita Mary and today we are continuing the reminiscing of the past. If you haven't watched part 1 of this video, I suggest you do that before or after. It doesn't really matter. Basically, the bottom line is that I recently turned 30, so in honor of entering this new era of my life, I am looking back at past eras, and boy, has there been a lot. If you're interested in my past in the fashion industry, fashion week, and sort of just me trying to be an it girl, I suggest you watch the first video. It's filled with that lookbook 2012 nostalgia, and honestly it was a blast to do. But today we are going back even further to my time before high school, and there's also a lot to be said about that time. Now have in mind, this is a vulnerable situation for me to be in because you're about to see me very young and very trying to find herself. And I honestly don't think I've shared these images with the internet. I had a DeviantArt profile where I was indeed an edgelord. The era in question is 2007 until 2010-11. Without further ado, let's get started. This isn't actually that bad. The thing that springs to the eye is the eye. I had a 2001 version of Photoshop. I got it from my grandfather and I used it for years and years. But what I primarily used it for was to change the color of my eye in a very obvious way. I had black hair and I wore a lot of clothes from H&M's children's department because it was cheaper, and they had a lot of checkered prints, which was chef's kiss. The bracelet or cuff I'm wearing here was my most prized possession. There were a couple of goth emo punk shops in Denmark, but it wasn't very widespread, so these kinds of things were high value. I once was sent home from school with a note saying I couldn't wear weapons on my body. And then I got a lot of my change from hardware stores, just normal regular hardware stores. It was awful for my skin, and today I also have an allergy for any kind of impurities in metal because I wore it just on my skin all the time. Bad idea, don't do that. I don't know why I'm looking this angry. I wasn't an angry girl. If someone were malicious or just like ill-intending towards me, I was not ready to fight them. But overall, I wasn't like an unhappy girl. But also the Jack Skellington everything. I loved Nightmare Before Christmas, and I feel like it was even mandatory to love Nightmare Before Christmas in this era. And if there was something with Jack Skellington on it, you rest assured that I had it. Also, I think it's important to mention that I was very cautious with many things. Like, I got into fights sometimes and I was like not scared to stand up for myself because I've always been a weird kid. I don't mind that. But I was very cautious with like partying. I didn't go to a party with alcohol until I was 16 or 17. I was scared. I didn't like that people were unpredictable. I don't really like it. I didn't talk to boys all that lot, and I was sort of scared to try anything with alcohol. Have never done drugs, also not today. To this day, I haven't smoked a cigarette. And at this time, people always sort of assumed that I was experimenting a lot with boys and girls, that I was partying, drinking, doing drugs, all that stuff. And I really, really wasn't. I was sitting in my room watching Tim Burton movies and listening to Avril Lavigne in an angsty fit. That was what I was doing. So this is right in the beginning of my J-fashion obsession. I realized that Japan had this whole scene of street fashion, and I was so incredibly inspired by it. I had books about it, and I was especially into decora and any kind of style that was really over the top, really many accessories, pink and girly, but like over the top. And that's what decora is, just being like decorated. I loved this, and I posted on some different fora related to J-fashion, and I think one of my pictures, not this one obviously, but later on, and I'll get to it, some of my pictures were also used in books and blogs and like television prompts about this style. I loved this sort of over the top, and especially I cut my own bangs, by the way. And one time I came down from my room and I'd cut my bangs in a triangle. I thought it was so cool. I thought it was so cool. Cut my bangs in this triangle, and I just looked at my mom just like, isn't this nice? I was a very unpredictable young girl. This was my phone. It was a Samsung like push flip phone. It wasn't like a flippy phone. It's like you could push the screen up. And then I had all these charms on it. I just had my phone in my pocket and all the charms were hanging out, so you couldn't really see there was a phone there. I can see we have Hello Kitty, we have Totoro, we have some Legos, just all bunch of stuff. Also Gloomy Bear. If you were a scene kid, you remember Gloomy Bear for sure. Also had some of that. And of course the bedazzling and the stickers. I also put them on my nose, I put them under my eyes, I put them across my nose, did all kinds of stuff. It was very, very fun. Really, really liked it. Honestly, it was just such a fun, expressive time. And I'm gonna cringe at some of the things that I did and some of the looks that I pulled. But overall, I'm just really grateful that I got to express myself in my own pace and that I really wasn't from my family and my parents especially. No one really said, oh, don't do that. If you're wondering about the watermark, this is a Danish chat platform for young people. It's closed now. I think it closed in 2012. Just a very iconic time in Danish youth culture. Leave a comment down below if you were ever on Auto, because this is me in my peak Decora era. We have several socks in different lengths. We have several skirts. I am wearing bunny ears, but not the kinky kind. I'm really sad that the quality of this picture is not better, but here we have the full extent. I 100% stand by this aesthetic choice, and you can criticize me for a lot of stuff, but being half-assed is not one of them. On TikTok recently, I saw a creator come up that dresses Decora now, and I think it's so amazing to see that this style isn't dead, that people are still enjoying this. It's so much fun and expressive. One criticism with my now sustainability eyes is that a lot of this stuff is fast fashion. The vast majority of it. I did DIY some things once in a while, but a lot of this stuff is fast fashion. A lot of this stuff is from eBay and drop shippers, and it's a lot of plastic things that I bought for basically no money because I basically had no money. So I either used like my birthday money, my Christmas money to buy accessories and stuff. So I wanted to get some bang for my buck here, which means that a lot of this stuff is so far from sustainable as you can come. Which isn't to say a premise for this style overall, but that was what was available, and it was also not on my priority to do this sustainably because I didn't really have that language articulated yet. It wasn't something that I thought about massively during this time in my life. You can achieve any look sustainably because sustainability is not an aesthetic, it's a method. So you can do any style you want sustainably, which if you're taking anything away from this video, let it be that. Anyway, absolutely loved the Decora era. I also wore glasses with no lenses. Like the glass part of the glasses was missing. I did that quite a lot. So I just bought plastic frames and I wore those. Anyway, I learned how I could take pictures where I could insert more of myself in the same picture. So I did that quite a lot. It would be a lie to not say this is not charged in a specific direction. I don't think I was necessarily aware of it when I took this picture. This is a little ice cream cone shaped container for the liquid you blow bubbles with. New era, by the way. I had this obsession with corsets and I couldn't afford an actual corset. I remember there was a brand, I think it still exists, it's called What Katie Did. I vaguely remember, and I wanted one of their corsets like nothing else. I also listened to Emily Autumn. If you remember, you're a real one. Loved it. And I wore these corsets to school. I also have some fake dreads put in here. They're made from wool, I think, so I had to take them out before showering. But I love this. And yeah, we have the home cut bangs. I stand by this 100%. Okay. The DeviantArt profile was giving! I did a lot of this stuff. Very expressive, creative editing of photos. I drew a cross on my mouth and then everything else is edited. And honestly, this is such a vibe. I think I channeled a lot of my sort of normal angsty teenage frustration into creative outlets like this. So a lot of people assumed that I was like super depressed, but I honestly thought it was very interesting to dabble in these darker emotions and darker sides of my own psyche. And I think everyone has those emotions and parts of themselves inside, but I don't think a lot of people are in contact with them the same way that I was, because I was perfectly capable of really channeling it and really like diving into these sadness things and then being super chippy and happy afterwards, like no problem. I honestly had such a fun time making these pictures. Very artistic, very not related to subcultures and styles. It's one of like the few things that I did. I think this was my profile picture for a really long time and everyone loved this photo. It's a little tutu skirt that I have on my torso, so it looks like a top. I think honestly this is fire. I also edited my eyes, but then for the longest time I had this kind of dark red hair. It was a transition from the black hair to red, so sort of like a slow transition, but loved this picture, honestly. It's so fun. The bell I'm wearing around my neck came from Lindt chocolate. They even still use those bells in their packaging, so whenever you look at those for Easter, know that this was my #1 accessory for a few months there. These shoes I got when I was 14, I think. I got them in London. I walked around in Harrods in these shoes. It was so iconic. This is from a photo shoot I mentioned in the last video as well, that if you were sort of an expressive, creative teen, you did photo shoots, and so many people did these. I have a couple of pictures from this series, but I just got this pair of pink feather wings and I needed to do something with them. So this is sort of what we did. And I can see this is from 2010. I did myself a great favor and put that there. So 2010. I cut a side cut on myself, I think with nail clippers even. And it wasn't like a cute little strip here. No, we are taking from the middle of our forehead and down to the back of our necks. All of it was gone. I did like a cardiogram in the middle of it and I thought I was so cool. I'm not into the Cora anymore. I moved into sort of a more Victorian inspired aesthetic. I wore petticoats and I wore stilettos, and this is sort of the era right before I started my fashion blog and I started doing all that. But I was still hanging on to the more alternative styles. So we did the fake dreadlocks. In my other video I'm talking about the time where I did it to my actual hair, which was not ideal. Here they are made from synthetic hair and I wore these. They were so heavy. I think they were 5 kilos or something. It was massive. I'm really happy that I didn't have hair here, otherwise it would have been my whole head. We can go into a longer discussion on whether or not I should have had dreads in the first place, but I was so curious about it. And I think when you're this young, you just experiment with things. You don't really think about where things are coming from or what they might represent for other people. That's not really within your scope. Now that's of course how I see a lot of the things now, how I see patterns and elements from other cultures now. That's all within my scope. But at this time, that's not something I worried about. And I think that's true for a lot of younger people, that you're really just trying to find yourself and express yourself. You're just experimenting with all kinds of different signifiers. And that's really what's going on here, because this is just a mashup of different aesthetics into one, honestly. Because I'm also wearing heirloom jewelry, like what's happening? I don't think anyone has ever worn synthetic dreads and a brooch together. The way I got into this more classic Victorian-esque inspired look was also through J fashion, by the way, because I was very into the Cora before, then my interest kind of shifted into the Lolita aesthetic. If you know, you know. Basically, it's about dressing very modestly. It's about using long skirts and petticoats. It still has this element of looking cute and innocent, which the Cora, I would argue, also has, but it's more classic. That's sort of the pipeline I went into. And this is sort of the toned down everyday version of that. We're doing stockings. We're also doing socks on top because old habits die hard. We're doing the beret. I still have that, by the way. Still use that. And then a petticoat and a more everyday-esque dress. Honestly, this look is fire. I don't know why I'm standing here, but that's the photo shoot mentality. Like, it has to look epic and cool and kind of editorial. It just looks like you're trying way too hard, honestly. But very Emily Autumn inspired again. Very dark and gloomy and mysterious. And lifting the top of vials we don't know what contains. Before the next picture, I would like to put a little trigger warning here, because I suffered heavily from an ED. I had so much trouble eating. I'm gonna show you a picture. It is edited, but I was skinny, but this is edited. If you have a hard time with that, skip until this point, because then I'll be done talking about it. Okay, this picture is edited, my shoulders are edited, but other than that, I'm just very, very skinny. I think this is a great example of how I never shied away from exploring those darker sides of myself, and I think it must have been sort of a type of self-therapy. I ended up going to real therapy much later, by the way, thank God. For the longest time, I thought that this picture was the best picture that was ever taken of me. In terms of style, this slaps. We have the black corset, we have the shoes, we have the hair, we have the little color. Everything is very nice. But now when I look at this picture, all I can see is someone who is just too skinny. I wish I could talk to this past version of myself and tell her that everything is gonna be fine. Tell her that we're gonna be okay. I found so much peace with myself, with food. I still like to explore like the darker things and like the gloomy, grim parts of my own psyche, as well as the human premise just across the board. I think it's incredibly fascinating. And I don't think that's something that's ever going to change about me. I also still experiment with my self-expression, with my clothes and how I present myself. I do it in a different way now, but I absolutely still do. Like, my legs are covered in tattoos, so like, there you go. It's so much fun to look back at the past versions of yourself, and I think whenever we do that, we need to pay our gratitude and respect to that little person that did her best. She was so brave. She didn't give a fuck what people thought about what she dressed like and what she looked like. I think that's honestly amazing. Would I care so little now? I don't think I would. So that purity, that confidence level, I think is something to aspire to. So although it's easy to feel embarrassed or it's easy to cringe when you see past versions of yourself, I think we need to pay our respect to those people as well, because I think she did a bloody good job, and I'm gonna go into my 30s with that sort of mindset. I recently heard someone say that although you're 30, you're also still 29, you're also still 22, you're also still 17, you're also still 10. All those ages, all those versions of you still, they're not gone. They exist within you, and I think that's such an amazing mentality to have. So if we can channel those positive parts of the past versions of ourselves, we're golden. And at the same time, that gives us a bloody good opportunity to look back on our past selves and reflect upon, did we really work through the things that we needed to work through? Sometimes you find something that's still lingering, something that you still need to work on in order to become the best version of yourself. And the best way to do that is to reminisce and reflect. So thank you so much for doing that with me. I hope you really liked this video. If you did, leave me a thumbs up. That would make my day. Let me know down below if any of you guys were on Arto, if any of you guys were into J fashion or maybe still is. Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day and take really good care of yourselves. Until next time. Bye. Thank you so much for watching this video, and also a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys help me create green, zero-waste content, and I love you guys. You can find the links to my social media accounts down below and the link to my Patreon on this screen. Bye!